Good morning. Isn't this incredibly exciting? You're probably all thinking, gee, let's just get the talks done and get on with it. So I'll try and be quite short. But on behalf of Cerebral Palsy Alliance, welcome, and I really hope that you have an inspiring day. I want to actually just go off script briefly and start with a warning. I've been a volunteer for this organisation for 10 years now, and I got involved after an event not unlike this one. So if you happen to make the mistake when Rob is listening of saying, is there anything else that I can do for the organisation, just be careful how long that might last, because here we are. So as was mentioned, I'm a business architect. There's a lot of architects here today, but I design businesses, and so see a lot of business cases. And I guess my brief this morning is to give the business perspective a little bit. I think it's one of the things that we've missed in this space. The thing that is disabling about disability and society's reaction to disability, and the fact that we're only just emerging out of an era when the default practice was to put us all institutions and forget about us, we've missed the business case. It's a massive, massive market. And I think organisations and people that are creating services and products have missed that because of the myths about disability. And so I'm hoping to shock you a little bit today with some of the numbers just about Australia. There's really lots of reasons to think about universal design, lots of nice reasons. It's better for everybody. My wife likes our accessible house better than next door too. It's better design. So when we talk about universal design and accessible design, really we are actually just talking about good design, to be quite honest. But let's put that aside for a second, because both of my parents are geologists, and so they're used to thinking about things in sort of 10,000 year timeframes, and that's how I grew up. And if you look back through history as a sort of personal journey type thing and look at civilizations and societies that have excluded large parts of their population don't last very long. And so I think as part of our journey as a civilization, we really need to get this right for our own best interests. We're much more likely to last and prosper and do interesting things if we get this right. Finally, in terms of that business case, whilst I'd like to think that people out there will make decisions because it is the right ethical and moral and aesthetic and proper thing to do, we need to also have the business case in our pocket so that the people who are making decisions about whether to invest, people that are looking at the business case like me, don't ignore you on economic grounds. And since the business case is so staggeringly clear, it is actually a weapon for us and we need it in our back pocket. So let's get into it a little bit. So it's good for business, and let's just talk briefly about some of the numbers. I've got a lot of words on this slide. I'm not going to talk to them, but it's painfully clear to me how uncreative I am compared to some of the other people presenting. Firstly, 1 in 5 people in Australia have a disability, and given our population demographics, that's going to grow significantly over time. The current market, we're talking about a $50 billion market just for the services and supports, the disability-specific services and supports that those people need right now. It's also about all of you. 1 in 4 people under 20 alive today will acquire a disability before they die, if you don't have one already. So we're actually talking about everyone, not just the 20% of the population that have a disability at the moment. As some of the other speakers and Jim this morning mentioned, we've also got the National Disability Insurance Scheme now, the NDIS, and that changes the way services and supports are funded for the market. And so now there's a new $22 billion market that's just 4 years away for accessible services, supports, goods, that people with disability are going to be out there in the market choosing the things that are most inclusive and accessible for them. So if I was a business, I'd be thinking about this really hard right now, and I know some of the really big ones that have are more future-oriented and longer-term thinking in their strategy are doing just that. But it's also much bigger than that. If you think about transport, it's not just about disability. If you take into account people with disabilities, elderly people, families with prams, so on and so on and so on, you're talking about 40% of the population that need accessible transport. And governments are thinking about that now too. It's core business. It's not a niche market. This is mass market stuff. And so with this cultural change that's occurring, just starting now, and the new market that the NDIS is bringing, this is really important for any business to think about. I'm really, when you hear some of those retailers on the television complaining about how no one buys their stuff anymore, I sort of want to ring up and say, well, how much is 20% growth worth to you? Because I can't get in the front door of your shop. And you might want to think about that. Let's think about the market then in a little bit more detail. Let's just unpick some of those numbers. These are the 2011 numbers from the Productivity Commission review of disability, and so they're actually probably smaller than real, but it's a good example. The estimated annual spend on aids and appliances and home modification in 2017-18 is about $1 billion a year as a market. When you think about that, that's about the same size as the market for tea and coffee. Another number, the NDIS is going to fund about 420,000 people for support packages. Well, Hyundai only sells 100,000 cars a year, so you're talking about significant numbers, things that are going to make a difference across the market. And that $1 billion is, remember from my first slide, if I go back, is just the person in black down there, the 1 in 50 people that the government is funding for their disability supports and services. So that little one is $1 billion, and that's a good start. It's also dwarfed by the broader number for disability supports and services generally. That number at the top there, 13 billion, this is per annum. We're talking really big numbers. And this is important because we're also talking about government spending and your taxes. That's where that money comes from. And so we need to also think about that this is actually better for the country. We're not actually just all getting really excited here because there's a big market for spending other people's money. No, it's about what's happening with the country as well. So let's think about it from the country's perspective. Let's say, just for a minute, because this is actually one of the reasons why we're doing all this, let's say that through universal design and cultural change and a little bit of inclusive design and inclusive communities, we're able to improve access to employment. And I'm not talking about some unrealistic pipe dream or some unachievable goal. I'm just talking about if we're just as bad as our OECD neighbours in terms of disability employment. So Australia's pretty bad at the moment. We're kind of down at the bottom of the list. If we just kind of get to the point where we're as bad as everyone else, that's worth $32 billion a year in GDP annually in terms of productivity and better outcomes for the country. So you can see why Jim's interested in what we're doing here, yeah? That's his goal, yeah? If you also then take the long-term changes to welfare spending that result on that, that's about another 2.7 billion. The comparison between the size of those two circles also tells you why I'm more focused on getting people into employment than I am about what we do with welfare spending. One, the size of the prize is much smaller compared to the other. Both of those numbers together are greater than the entire federal budget savings that the Senate are going after at the moment, just in perspective. So we can ring up Joe after this session and say, Joe, have we got a solution for you? You don't need to cut anything. You don't need to tax anything. All you need to do is think a little bit differently and facilitate some cultural change and be enabling in your designs. And I think that's something that is very much worth going after. I hope that has inspired you to think about what you're doing and be encouraged by the fact that there is definitely a market for the designs that you come up with. Good luck, have a great 2 days, and thank you very much.